Alrighty, well, thesis is a really big thing to reflect on, so I'm just going to go through the five sort of pieces. And the first one being the seminar blogs. And when I was reading through all of my seminar blogs, one of the things that sort of struck me was how how much I was trying to be profound as I was writing them. And I think part of that comes from as I was reading these pieces or thinking back on discussions that we had had, I found myself more wrapped up in the emotion than the actual thought sometimes, and I had trouble conveying that clearly. So I spent a lot of time sort of writing my way around it. And I think most of the time I got there eventually, but sometimes it's hard to see where the emotion is coming from, and so it ends up just being these sort of long running blog posts that sound really pretty and seem to make a point, but almost take too long to get there. And I feel like that got better as I went through my thesis, my seminar blogs, and I got more and more concise, more and more to the point, focusing more on the argument I wanted to make or the argument that I wanted to convey rather than just what I was feeling about the topic. So that transitioned into my early thesis research, and one of the things that I remember most distinctly about sort of picking a topic was people telling me to pick the topic that I would have fun with and to pick the topic that would keep me entertained, would not get bogged down in, wouldn't be sort of a struggle to just slog through the whole time. And that's sort of what led me to my topic about monsters, because it had that sort of glitz and glam, that pizzazz to it, that would not only keep me interested, but also would sort of perk the ears of any listener. So my early thesis writing kind of reflects that excitement, and it shows a lot of that energy that the topic itself had. Because I think a lot of what I found in my early thesis research, I would read the abstract of something and save it for later, and then the abstract would spark an idea of my own, and I would write about it, and then I'd go back to the source, and I'd find some more information, and then I put it in the writing, and I went back and forth and back and forth. And so there's just a lot of excitement in that writing and a lot of excitement in that research and the notes of my research. There's stuff scribbled all over my binder. There's sticky notes everywhere, stickers here, color coded there. And I think that reflects more on my state of mind than what I actually did there. But I think what I learned to do was sort of synthesize and to immediately start having my own thoughts, not because I was reading to respond, but because I was reading to understand. So my first thesis drafts were mostly kind of just the synthesis of those pieces where I had taken this bit of information from over here and then my own thoughts and then this bit of information. But a lot of it was sort of common knowledge that I put down on paper and extrapolated to sort of the nth degree. And I think some of that still comes through in my thesis, which I don't think is a bad thing because I think it relates it back to the reader more. And I incorporated more of the information, obviously, and that kind of thing. But I learned to take something that was such a big topic and so kind of complicated with so many pieces of psychology over here and pop culture over there and trying to pull them all together and thread them together. But what I learned to do was pull that back into something your sort of average reader can relate to and understand, something that they can find easy to comprehend but also interesting, that not only challenges them but stays on their plane. So the next piece is the revision of her presentation. Okay, so the revision process for me was a lot of tacking on pieces at the end of my thesis that bolstered my argument, particularly with my survey. So I spent a lot of time working just on getting the data in. And so there's several drafts that don't change that much, where I just sort of struck a few bits of unnecessary language or reworded something or tried not to repeat myself. But the biggest change comes when that survey analysis goes into the end of my paper, and then the conclusion comes after that. So that was sort of an ongoing revision process. So even when other people weren't necessarily working on their paper, they were working on presentation or something like that, that was always running underneath the surface of my thesis and the surface of my thesis process. But while all of that was happening, I was really excited about my presentation, and each change that happened to either the location or what I wanted it to look like ended up working out really well, and I think that it turned out as well as it could have. For the presentation preparation, I think that memorizing something for me was definitely the way to go, and just having it like right there in the back of my head. No struggle to remember it, no issues with that. Just sort of getting it down piece by piece, not using any visual aid or anything like that, but just rolling with it. And that sort of took some stress off of me, actually, because I knew that I had it down, and even though I had like stumbled over it the day before, the actual day of the presentation, I knew that I had prepared enough for it, and that whatever happened, the people that were going across the stage behind me would be able to roll with it, and it would all work out just fine. So the biggest part of the biggest sort of hiccup in my presentation preparation was probably just trying to find a space that would fit that dream and molding the two together. So my why throughout, and my why for the next phase. My why in the beginning of thesis was honestly probably to prove to myself that I was capable of doing all of the things people had always said I was capable of doing. I wanted to know that I could do something bigger than just make an A in class. And that sort of grew into wanting to do something for other people. And it wasn't just to prove it to myself anymore, it was because I found that that's what I was passionate about, was doing something for people, for working with people, for bringing out the passions of other people. And that's something I had never thought of before and sort of discovered through thesis. And I think that definitely plays into my why now. And it changed sort of my life plan, because I'm one of those people that lays out the steps of my life and then they all go to crap and I do it again because that's logical. But I realize now that that's sort of at my core, is bringing out the passions of other people and pushing people towards something. If I see the light in somebody's eyes when they're talking about something and their face just lights up and they get so excited, I can talk to anybody about anything if they're that passionate about it. It doesn't matter if I agree with them. It doesn't matter if I think they're going to struggle with it. If they're excited about it, I can go with it. And that's something that sort of led me to sociology as a major in college, and then moving on to like big business and human resources as a career path, which, while I'm definitely not set on, because I've done the set on and thrown in the trash thing before, I think is probably a good choice for me, at least how it looks right now. And I honestly thank Thesis for helping me to find that, because I don't know if I ever would have had I not gone through this process.